article, I highly recommend it. Over on Container Journal, two things. Red Hat embeds container tools in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which, is a no-brainer, obviously, but let's see what they've got in there. And then also, the folks over at Software AG have launched App Mesh, and you can see what Software AG is doing on it. On DevOps.com, we have a couple articles to bring out to you. How to get your digital data game on with data ops. Data ops is increasingly becoming an important piece of the DevOps puzzle. Of course, the data ops people tell you it's bigger and separate than DevOps, but whatever. Just don't call us late for dinner, right? But understand about data ops. It's something I think you want to understand and have a handle on. Another good article is how SDM's holistic approach connects organizations, streamlining delivery processes. And so this is around software delivery management, which sits on top of, it's a CloudBees term actually, came up with it. But it's really, the way I look at it is if the software delivery pipeline is the factory floor, that assembly line, that's called SDA. The SDM is up at the executive offices on how do you manage that plan for it and make it all work together. So it's a good dive on SDM. Check that out. And that's it for the news today. As I said, there's plenty more out on the sites, though. Please do check them out. Check out the next installment of Bob Resselman's The Adventures of Microservice. The decoupling is out. I think it's episode 3 or 4 on Security Boulevard. Check that out as well. And now let's head over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our managing editor, for her interview for today, Friday, April 24th. And Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, thanks, Alan. This is Charlene O'Hanlon here at TechStrong TV. I'm managing editor at Media Ops, and one of the things that we're hearing so much about these days is the COVID-19 pandemic that's not only wreaking havoc on people's health, but also the health of the economy. It's become clear that everyone is being affected by this pandemic in one way or another, and even in areas where jobs were considered recession-proof or safe, quote unquote, layoffs are happening, and people are really, really feeling the impact everywhere. So I've got Clockwise CEO Matt Martin with me, about to do an interview, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that developers and engineers can do to kind of recession-proof their jobs, their careers, despite the economy being what it is. So Matt, thank you so much for taking a few minutes and talking with me today.
Of course, this is an incredibly important topic right now, and I'm sure it's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's start off first though by you tell me a little bit about your company. I'm not very familiar with Clockwise.
Of course. So Clockwise is a company that creates an intelligent calendar assistant that helps you defragment your day, defragment your schedule so that you can make more time for focused work. So we work a lot with the developer community, with software engineers, with designers, with product managers and software companies to connect to calendars, move those meetings around a little bit to open up that meaty time, that maker time, so that you can go heads down and get your work done without interruption.
That's great. That's great. So, so you guys know all about productivity then, for sure then.
We do. We think very, very deeply about it, yes. And we see the trends unfurl across the industry right now in real time. We have a lot of usage, a lot of users, and therefore a lot of calendar data where we observe kind of what's happening with this switch to remote work.
I imagine there's some really interesting statistics there.
There are. It turns out we're spending a lot more time in Zoom calls, and there's not as much out of office and vacation time. So trends that you might imagine.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Well, let's talk a little bit about the subject at hand, basically, which is how engineers and developers can recession-proof their careers. And I came across this statistic that really scares me. It's the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They actually projected that the global economy is going to contract 3% this year. And they had originally said that it was going to expand 3.3%. So
Mhm.
that's huge. I mean, and they're saying that it's going to be the worst contraction since, or the worst downturn, I guess, since the Great Depression. So that's frightening in and of itself. And then when you think about just the way organizations are kind of changing their business models to accommodate this new way of working, and we're seeing more people working from home even after the pandemic ends. It's kind of expected that the work from home and working remotely will be kind of the new thing, and nobody really has any idea how that's going to impact the workplace in general. So obviously folks are really, really going to be hit hard by everything that's going on. So what is it that people in IT and specifically developers and engineers, what are some of the things that they can do to kind of improve their collective outlook?
Absolutely. So first, at a very top level, I just want to hit on the fact that, absent this, and it is a very scary environment, those numbers scare me as well. And I think we all need to be open-eyed and rational about that.
Mhm.
But we head into this with some wind at our backs in the IT profession, given that this has been a market that has been expanding dramatically, as we all know. Heading into this year, 70% of IT managers thought they were going to expand their workforce in 2020.
Right.
Now, that's not going to end up being the case, but we are better situated than a lot of industries at a base level. Now, that said, I also want to just hit Charlene just on some high-level basic practices before diving into IT specific. We're all susceptible to this downturn, and I'm not a personal finance expert, nor will I pretend to be one. But I highly advise people to go out and look at resources on places like nerdwallet.com or other financial tips, because at a basic kind of financial hygiene level, you do want to, if possible, build up a larger cash reserve than you might normally have. You do want to try to keep your job that you have, even if you're looking, keep the job that you have and look while you're employed, and also to dive into some of the resources that are available if you are unemployed to make sure you're taking care of those as well, just at a base level.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so moving into the IT industry, just some key tips just at the top level. So some of these are no-brainers, but I just want to cover them. So you want to invest in your network right now. We are all work remote. I think we're mostly, probably your audience is very familiar with the stats around how many new jobs come from referrals and how many successful placements come from your network. And so you want to take some time, if you haven't done so recently, just to comb through your network, maybe go on LinkedIn, maybe go through your email and identify some people that you want to catch up with, even if you're employed currently. If you're not employed and you are actively hunting, this is also going to be the best way that you're going to find prospects, but also inform yourself about the job opportunities that are out there. Hop on some more Zoom calls, have a Zoom happy hour, whatever it takes. It should be fun, hopefully, but that's a first level of advice. The second level is, investing in your skill set. So this is less about taking up a new field, unless you're really junior. I mean, you may hear some buzz around, AR, VR jobs are up, but who knows how these different industries are going to be hit over the course of a recession. I think it's too difficult to predict what buzzy areas are going to have higher job retention and employment opportunities. And to the extent that you're a seasoned IT professional, definitely stick with what you know, but look at how you're going to expand that and deepen it. And Charlene, I think good news for your audience is that to the extent that you are in the dev stack, that you are in the build stack, this is a really good place to be right now, because for the entire audience of software engineers, what you're trying to create is making yourself essential. If your company is looking at cutting the workforce, and I hope it doesn't come to this, but it is at a lot of places right now. If they're cutting the workforce by a certain percentage, you want to make sure that you're one of those essential employees that's really vital to the operations. And a good way to do that, regardless of whether you're already there, is to get closer and closer to that essential layer of dev productivity, the build stack. And I can talk a little bit more about that, Charlene, if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything that you might also have a point of view on or statistics on regarding training and certification related to any of that that'd be great too.
Absolutely. So At a couple layers, I think, this splits a little bit now depending on the particular area that you operate inside of the software engineering ecosystem. I'm a front-end engineer, so this is the area that I'm most comfortable speaking of, but I do have stats on a variety of other areas. But let's just start with front-end engineering. The patterns here are very predictable. You could go look at the top skills at any reports. CVcompiler.com has a great one out right now that's pretty fresh. JavaScript, CSS, those are obviously basics. But if you're not already familiar with things like React or Angular, these are very good times to invest in building up that skill set. And there are a variety of resources online to help you do that. But I would also push people to go in a step even further, which is maybe pick up TypeScript if you haven't thought of picking up TypeScript. Maybe get into GraphQL, or again, getting yourself closer to that build stack, pick up Webpack or the compiler level where you can actually help the whole developer team at your company be faster. For backend developers, I'm using that pretty broadly. One of the top skills right now that's reported, and this is a very large label, but is AWS. Understanding that level of cloud compute and also cloud storage, whether it's AWS, Azure shows up, Google Cloud, understanding how to facilitate that. Also understanding, again, for this audience, very relevant, the build layer, Kubernetes, a few other technologies that come up frequently, Jenkins, Docker, Ansible, getting yourself into that build stack where you're really going to be essential. And then if you look at this overall, the other thing that you should be cognizant of is that while these are some of the skill sets that you want to develop if you can and get them onto your profile, there's always the old and steady, always in demand languages and skill sets around C++, JavaScript, Java, SQL, Python. These are valuable skill sets, and what you want to do there is just push to deepen yourself, push to make sure that you're understanding those languages that are your primary languages at a high level of proficiency, so that if you go into a job environment interview, or if you're facing a downsizing at your company, that you can speak with confidence about how you are an expert in those areas.
So it sounds like, kind of maybe less specialization, becoming more of a, I don't want to say jack of all trades, but really, really kind of expanding that the breadth of knowledge that you have in those languages would be helpful. What about Cobol? Because I'm hearing a lot about Cobol lately.
The Cobol stuff is really interesting because you have Cobol engineers who are in demand because of legacy systems, and Cobol's not a language that very many modern developers are familiar with. I have to say, Charlene, I'm talking down a turn right here because I don't have data in front of me, but I'm skeptical that that's a broad trend. I think certainly if you want to go very, very highly specific with your job hunt and you're seeing some of those Cobol jobs available and you do have some knowledge of Cobol as a language, and you would have an advantage where you could go brush up on it and bring yourself up to speed. There aren't a lot of engineers in the community right now that have any familiarity with Cobol. So that might be advantageous, but I just don't know, is that a broad trend, or is that just a series of articles we're seeing right now because for developers like myself, it's an interesting phenomenon?
I think it's a short-term spike myself. I think that, organizations that are running the mainframes had such a spike of use, and they just couldn't handle it. So I think it's short-term, but that said, who's to say that that's not going to happen again sometime soon? So maybe not have Cobol your main area of focus, but it's definitely something to keep in your back pocket, I think.
I think that's right, and I think that's true. I think that's true of any niche. So if you do have, there's kind of a split here, if you will, Charlene, where you do want to develop kind of that broad basis of core knowledge, because if you're going out on the general market, you're just going to have more jobs that you're available to, but it's going to be a more crowded market, and it's going to be a longer job hunt that you have to prepare yourself to, because there's going to be more competition, and employers are largely going to have selection. And also, I think all employers are going to raise the bar a little bit on their hiring process. So if you do have on top of that core skill set, a niche skill set that can really make you highly attractive to a specific job opportunity, that's a great area to target, and that's a great area to augment.
What about those soft skills, like engineers being able to, write sentences and things like that? And I hate to say that it's a very broad stroke that I'm painting there, but engineers
Yep.
are not normally known for their their writing skills. So just anything it's business related. What are some of the skills, those softer skills that would be helpful for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Clockwise, for example, we pay a lot of attention to the software skills. We're looking for well-rounded software engineers that, again, have that depth and that expertise, but are going to be a valuable member of the team and going to be highly productive across a wide variety of skill sets. And that often does mean interaction with product managers, interaction with design, interaction certainly with other engineers. And so what employers are going to be looking for is and this may sound facile, but just a good human being, just somebody that you want to be in the room with.
Yeah, just
But I
don't
think
be a jerk, right?
That's right. That's right. And so I think a few tactical tips there are, first and foremost, always keep in mind that you will be evaluated on those lines. So it's not just about coming in and it's a whiteboarding exercise or a coding challenge, or it's an interview and knocking out the technical side of it. You are always going to be evaluated on those soft skills, and you really have to pay attention to those throughout the process. And then the second tactical is going back all the way back to LinkedIn. Now's a good time to request from people some recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. And some of them, I would advise that you really think about who you want those recommendations to be, because people might source them as referrals. So don't just make them a quote that looks nice on a page. Really make sure that you have that relationship. But that's an opportunity to get some feedback on where your strengths are and your weaknesses are on these soft skills. Use that as an excuse with the recommender to have a conversation about what they think your strengths are, and you can lean into those. And then lastly, if you're looking for something just tactical to do, I think there is a huge value to engineers who can work with product managers, and in a tough situation where we are seeing downsize, maybe even take on some of the lightweight coordination duties his or herself, being a tech lead, being a manager, being a mentor. And so brushing up on best practices in, sorry, my dog just grabbed a toy. Excuse me while I yank this from him.
All right.
The joys of working from home, right?
Exactly.
But I really love Marty Kagan's book, Inspired. It's a little bit thicker. It's not too thick, but you could just skim it in a day or over a weekend, and you'd have some really good talking points to think through in terms of some of those soft skills that you might bring to the process.
Okay. All right, great. What about, just plain old stepping up and filling the requirements, not just the requirements of the job, but maybe kind of taking it a step beyond and actually volunteering for extra work, extra tasks, those things that kind of get you noticed in the organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, as I started with, the best job to find is right now is the one that you already have. Yeah. So bolstering that skill set, and this will all pay dividends over time, right? I mean, in this environment, if you can prove your mettle, it will certainly position you well to get a promotion or a promotion in the future, and possibly build out skills that are going to be valuable on the job market. And so I think, to your point, Charlene, there is a lot to that. And I think the place that I would start personally is so that you don't waste cycles. It's really easy to dive in a project that you find interesting. It's easy to dive in a project that you think may be valuable, but check that. Go have the conversation with your manager. What can I do to best serve the organization right now? I know it's a tough time for everyone. How can I really help? Or have that conversation even with your manager's manager, or with your team or your tech lead. And really, I think people are going to value that person who's stepping up in a way that's conscious of everybody else's needs.
Good advice. Good advice. So, I've often heard the term fortune favors the bold. And so I'm wondering if that applies now. I mean, would it be a good time to be bold with your career?
You know, I think the most prudent thing to do is actually to be conservative. And I don't think that's the antithesis of bold. You can be conservative and bold at the same time. But I think you need that solid foundation to be able to be bold. And to make some sense of that, if you have a job, it's not the time to jump out and find something new. But what you can do is use your time tactically within that job to spin up some of these networking opportunities, to spin up some of the kind of due diligence on your own profile, to dive into some other areas of work, and to play the job market. That's not necessarily a bad thing to do. There are still places that are looking to strategically take hold of the moment and hire with velocity. And so there are job opportunities out there. It's not a bad idea to entertain those, but you just want to be careful about making sure you have that solid foundation. And if you're on the job market now, be wary that these cycles are going to be longer, that no job search is complete until you're in the front door, and well, not in the front door these days, but on a Zoom call, collecting a paycheck. Right. You don't want to cut off job hunts or interview processes before you have that very solid offer where you're already, frankly, already collecting a paycheck. Mm-hmm. So being bold with a solid foundation, I guess, is how I'd frame it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's I'll go with that. Absolutely. All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me today. It's a subject that is important, but I kind of wish we didn't have to have the discussion. But
I agree with you completely. On the plus side, there are some interesting trends going on. Remote work opens up opportunities for people that they may not have thought that they have. Everybody's remote. I think it's cracked the thought process for a lot of employers, whether they're hiring in their location geographically or across the country. So there is still opportunity out there, and our industry is a good one to be in. But I agree. I wish that we did have the conversation in light of the macro environment.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time. I do appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much, Charlene, and all the best.
Thank you, you too. All right, stay tuned. We've got more TechStrong TV coming up, so stick around.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Okay, everyone, back here in the studio just for a moment because we're about to head over to the Analyst Corner with Mitch. It's Mitchell Ashley, CEO of Accelerated Strategies, with his Friday show.
I'm very excited to share with you some of the latest data that we've collected. We've really been focusing on the impact of the COVID virus, both in terms of technology, but also how we work. And of course, we're in the middle of maybe beginning, I don't know, we're in the journey we are of this evolution and also the economic fallout from it. But certainly, if there's anything I don't know what the new normal will be, but I know it won't be normal. And I think we're building what that next thing is going to be like. If you recall some previous data that we shared with you, we had 60% of people that responded, and this was over 1,000 people that responded to this survey, said that they wanted to work from home 3 or more days per week. If I recall, it was around 45% that wanted to either were permanent or wanted to be permanent. So we're really discovering kind of what's important, and health crises, economic crisis, job crisis, those kind of things, when they happen, well, they're not pleasant, and sometimes they can be extremely bad situation, including loss of family members or life. It makes you realize what things are important. And I think that shows up in our data this week. So we asked the question, so if you're going to work from home, why is that? What's the reason why you would prefer working at home, whether it's, full or part-time? The number one response at 75%, again, a pretty strong message, was zero commute. They get the time back. There's no traffic. There's no crowds. So if you can imagine, if you're driving, maybe half an hour is not too bad. An hour, 2 hours a day, some people go a lot farther than that. That's time you get back. And while you may do calls or listen to tapes or other things while you're doing that driving and commuting on a bus or whatever it is, it's still not truly productive time. It's time you really could have used back with your family, maybe doing other work activities. So that's a huge indicator. And I think is one of the things we would look to about what is the new normal going to look like. Some of the other data from this was the second biggest reason at 54% was safety from COVID-19. Just unsure when it's time to return back into what situation, and is it going to be safe for us, and not wanting to bring it back to family members or grandparents or things like that. So there's still a lot of concern. 54%, over half, cited that as one of the primary drivers for wanting to work from home. The third and fourth were really pretty close to each other: flexible schedule and fewer distractions. And the others kind of fall below that: custom work environment, more time with loved ones, comfortable clothes, things like that. So as I said, I may not know what the new normal is going to look like, but I know it won't look normal, and it won't be normal. There will be changes, because if you think about the process that we're in, while we may be in a lockdown or stay-at-home kind of situation, and different states and economies are starting to reduce some of those, there's also a lot of talk about if anything happens too quickly and we have a resurgence of the virus, they'll come back and implement those stay-at-home rules again. Discussions of in the fall about the flu and also COVID virus, a resurgence of that. And, historically, there've been a pattern where those can be worse than the first round. Let's certainly hope that that's not the case. So I think work at home situation for a while, and there may be some changes here and there back and forth, but I doubt we're all rushing back to the office, or I know we aren't all at once. There certainly have to be a place that everyone's going to feel safe, and your employer's going to feel safe to bring their employees back. It'll happen in steps and starts and waves. And again, maybe a number of people will stay home. They won't be working in their office environment, at least for part of their week. So appreciate everyone who's taken the survey. I'm happy to share the results with you, some really interesting data. It's a great confirmation of why are people thinking what they are in this sort of unpredicted, uncertain situation, and thinking about how we look forward. So I wish you the best. Be safe, be well, and be careful out there.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Digital Anarchist.
And here is what I mean about when we talk about democratization of security, right? So first of all, manage security like code. And when we say manage security, I mean implementation, validation, enforcement. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. I know I need to speed things up, but these are the aspects which are critical. Number two, make security self-service. And I already gave you the example of that, right? Can a developer run a vulnerability analysis of a container they just built themselves? And they're not dependent upon us, the security professionals, to do that. Technology stack agnostic. One of the things which scares developers off is a sprawl of technology. And I actually have a slide on this later, but we as an industry, as an IT industry, are great at adopting new technologies, but we suck at retiring old technologies. And which makes our job as security professionals very difficult, and our job as developers very difficult, because as a developer, I do not know what security stack has what kind of requirements when it comes to security. Automate mitigation of security and compliance risks and include security in the DevOps chain. That's the whole aspect of what we are calling DevSecOps, which is make security a part of your application delivery pipeline. And this is complex. This is not going to be easy. This is a huge challenge because there is high complexity. There are multiple technology stacks in an organization. We are now have on-premise, we are in the cloud, we are using third-party SaaS services. All of those now need to be a part of the security posture. It's expensive because the regulatory and compliance enforcement is expensive and it's constantly changing, right? How many of you think we are done? CCPA was the last one to come. Right? It was the first one to come, and there are more coming, right? And there are multiple demands, right? I was talking to another client of mine, and I was talking to their AI and machine learning team, their data science teams. And they are really struggling because their security policies give them access to only the last 3 years of data. And they're going, wait a minute, most of our cycles are annual. I'm training my machine learning model. If you just give me 3 years of data, I have only 3 data points. How am I supposed to find a trend with 3 data points? How do I train my machine model? I need 10 years data points. I need 20 years. We are a 90-year-old bank. Give me all the data, right? Let's bring out those punch cards back and give me the data so I can truly train it on trends. But that was a security policy that developers and the data science team would not have access to data which is more than 3 years old. And of course, something we know all in this InfoSec world, in the security world, there is a high demand of talented people and skilled people who know all the modern technologies, and they are difficult to hire. So there are many models, and now this is an eye chart. Let me talk about what this is. And these slides, I believe, will be available to you. At least I think if anybody wants. But if you're taking a picture, this side of mine is my better side, so over this side. So wait for me to turn. Right? And there are many models, and one of the models we developed at IBM was this risk-value-based model, right? Which says that you have to look at applications not based on technology stack, but based on its risk-value profile. So at one end of the application, you have the industrialized core. These are the high-value, low-risk tolerant applications. These are the ones which are paying the bills. But at the other end, the agile edge, you have new kind of applications where you are experimenting. Experimentation is the key. You're trying to discover new markets or capture new markets. And the whole goal of this model, and there are blog posts I have on this, if you're looking to delve deeper, is to understand that in order for the agile edge to grow, for you to be able to do more experimentation and innovation, you have to reduce the cost of experimentation. Because experimentation, by definition, means most experiments will fail to find the one that succeeds. And that cost has to come down. And the risk tolerance needs to go up. And in most large enterprises, traditional enterprises, risk tolerance is very, very low for doing something new. And if something fails, it can be a career-ending move for people. Because the idea of experimenting to discover what works is not in the culture of most large traditional applications. But the goal of us building the model was to figure out what to focus on. When you're trying to scale on in an organization, go from 1 or 2 small teams which are doing innovation, but to bring that innovation culture through an entire organization, what do I focus on standardizing and what do I not focus on standardizing? And when we talk about an area to standardize, we mean both technology and we also mean the processes. So language you're going to develop your code in is not on this list because you want to let the developers develop code in whatever language they want. Technology stacks are not in this list, but aspects of technology are in this list. So we'll delve into each and every one of these. So planning. What I'm going to do is for each and every one of these, I'm going to talk about, as I go through these slides, the aspect which is relevant to us as InfoSec professionals. Getting involved, oh, you like that, you like my, oh, by the way, I spend more time finding the memes than on writing the slide. As you can see, the slide is 6 words. Yeah, who needs a plan, right? Getting involved in early planning stages as the InfoSec owners is absolutely critical. You all know this, we all know this, right? But it is absolutely critical, and we as InfoSec professionals have to push back on people who are doing agile and say, you have to include us. You can't exclude us. You cannot do your planning without keeping security in mind. You cannot staple on security after the fact. At the end of the day, your system will be as secure as the least secure component, as a lot of organizations have recently found out in some of these very public breaches. In order to understand that, one needs to very quickly understand very well the architecture of those applications and understand what the dependencies of those architectures are. And as I said earlier, we are excellent at adding technology stacks, horrible at removing them. Who will drive under this building, man? If they move the refrigerator from the left to the right, I mean, this party is over. Right. But you'd be surprised how many actually, and I do a lot of application architecture assessments, how many applications I could give them this picture and say, this is what your application's architecture looks like. Yep, very, very. Unfortunately, both these pictures are from India, this one and this one. Could be any third world country, right? Yeah. But I know what language that is, so yeah, it's from India. After architecture comes deployment automation. How is that being automated and self-service being provided by security professionals so that the vulnerabilities are detected before the code is deployed, even if it is deployed to a test environment, right? There was a large hotel chain which was breached recently. I'm not giving any names, but you can Google it. And it was breached via a test environment, where code which had a vulnerability had been deployed, and their goal was to deploy it to a test environment and then do the vulnerability testing. Too late. Too late, right? You have to do the vulnerability testing beforehand. So security practitioners need to shift from being enforcers to enablers by delivering automation as a part of the delivery automation stack. I'm meeting with a CIO of a bank, right? And he's had me come in and I deliver a keynote, and we are meeting later for lunch. And I'd shown this slide, and this guy's from New Zealand, right? And in his fake, Gerard Butler accent, he's trying to say, tonight we test in prod. Sanjeev, that was the most hilarious slide, ha, 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 ha. And the whole table is quiet, right? And I'm like, what happened here, man? And people look up, and his VP of App Dev looks up to him and says, Joe, the last deployment, the release we made last year, 2 months ago, we tested in prod. We ran out of time. But this is the reality, right? And here's the key, right? If we are doing 2-week sprints, but it takes 3 weeks to get security to approve something, how long are your sprints? It has to be a part and parcel and in sync with the whole process of delivering code. This is, by the way, this slide, if you ever go to a DevOps presentation, we are legally required to put this slide in. Yes, sir? Sure. Absolutely, and it's a cultural thing. I mean, the worst example of that, which we all saw very publicly, was healthcare.gov, right? It wasn't a security problem, but of the few 100,000 people who were supposed to sign up on day one, how many knows how many signed up? 6. Because the login page didn't work. It was integration testing was skipped to make the deadline. It is citing examples like that that we can teach our other leadership who are responsible for creating these unrealistic schedules and say, you have to give somewhere, right? True. What would you rather have? A healthcare.gov which was delayed or healthcare.gov which was released the way it was released? And the cost of fixing it was humongous. And it wasn't that the individual pieces didn't work. The individual pieces worked. They skipped integration testing. And prod became test, and the test failed. And out of 200,000 people who were expected to register, only 6 got past the login page. That's a pretty bad failure, right? So what I typically do is work with executives and cite examples like that to let them know that this is what will happen if we skip a stage. Right? We have to get all the stages through because we end up otherwise testing in prod, and that's not a happy situation. Absolutely. Through every stage, yes. It should be a part and parcel. Sure. And back in the day, and this is still valid, right? I mean, there was a study done about how the cost of fixing something goes up based on which stage of your application delivery lifecycle. And I know that study is not as valid as much because if you're doing true DevOps and continuous delivery, you don't have those stages. But the idea was that if you found a defect during requirement stage and it cost you $1, it'll cost you $10 when fixed in coding, it'll cost you $100 when fixed in test, and $1,000 when fixed in integration test, and $10,000 when fixed in prod. That ratio still remains, right? It is 10,000 times more expensive, and think of the reputational impact of finding something wrong or of something that could be found, right? If you don't know, something cannot be found, that's different, but something, a known defect, a known vulnerability, finding it in prod, it is, and the point is that technology exists today to be able to catch it much sooner. That's why all that automation, spot on, is very critical. This is a quote from a defense contractor I did a project with, and he was telling me, these cruise missiles, they don't have a Cat5 port on the side. There is no OTA. It's not like Tesla where you can over-the-air update the patch, right? In fact, he was giving me an example that, how they update software on a Navy ship? The ship has to dock. New servers will be sent there. The old server will be removed, and the new server will be put in. There is no way to patch software while it has been deployed on a ship. You have to remove the entire server. So think about the cost of doing that if there is a minor defect which could have been caught and fixed before it was deployed. Same way with a missile, right? Once it's launched, it's launched, right? It's going to hit a target or hit something else, right? That's why they have abort buttons on them. But if the defect is in the abort button command, what do you do then? And last but not the least is operational readiness, right? And there's this whole concept, and I think you guys were talking about it, at least those of you who were in the morning session, I think you all were talking about moving from mean time between failure to mean time to repair, but what you repair is more critical, right? And as we move towards, I'll give you a second to read this tweet. As we move towards a containerized microservices world, it is becoming more and more complex. Right? Because you're not talking about fixing one defect where there's one application with one service. It is an amalgamation of several services which are getting composed on demand in real time, and you have to do your root cause analysis on that to figure out where the defect was. Eventually, it's all about culture, as we've been discussing, right? Everybody needs to be responsible. This is the best T-shirt actually I ever saw. And this T-shirt was at an insurance company. Their app dev leader was giving it out to everybody. He said, everybody is responsible for delivering value to the customer. He gave it to all his development team, his QA team, his ops team. Then he went and gave it to the janitor and said, hey, listen, if the restroom is closed during work hours for some cleaning you are doing and people have to go to another floor, waste 10 minutes, you just delayed deploying customer value. He went and gave it to the CFO and said, hey, if you furlough my developers around in December, you have now suddenly delayed delivering business value to the customer. He went and gave it to the coffee machine and vending machine repair guy and said, people have to go to Starbucks because they can't get their coffee. That's the cultural aspect of it. Everybody is a stakeholder and an equal stakeholder. There can't be somebody special. which goes back to my point, why I don't like the term DevSecOps. Why call it out? If you say DevOps, it includes security. By the very definition of DevOps, it includes everybody. So the new aspect, so let's talk about what's coming, right? Where is this all headed, right? And the new area which has been emerging in the area of readiness, in the area of resilience and response, incident response, is the whole concept of chaos engineering. Chaos engineering is not a new term, it's been around forever, but the people who were first to productize it and codify it in the IT space was Netflix. Netflix created something called the Simian Army. Their first product was called Chaos Monkey. And the thinking was very simple. If you have a blowout of a tire on a cold, wintry day on a dark highway, can you replace the tire? Now, if you ask me, I'll say, yeah, I have AAA on speed dial on my phone. But what if cell service is out? Can you replace the tire? How do you know you are sure you can replace the tire? Well, the only way to do it is every Sunday afternoon, you pull the car into the driveway, you take a screwdriver, make a hole in your tire, have your kids stand around you throwing cold ice water on you while you change the tire. If you do that enough times, you'll be good at changing a tire and you'll be confident that the tire can be changed should you ever need to do it under these bad circumstances. And we do it all the time. How many of you have ever participated in a fire drill? That is essentially at the least expected time. That's where it really should be, but instead we all get an email saying there'll be a fire drill today at 1 a.m. What the heck? That's when I go for a break because I don't want to be a part of the fire drill and stand outside. So, but that is the thinking behind chaos engineering. The way Netflix has delivered it is they delivered a suite of tools and they open source them, which randomly go skill services in actual production. And the whole goal is to get their engineers in a mindset that they will deliver code which can effectively recover, do self-remediation, and all the services which are connected to it can elegantly degrade their performance without dying. So what is the result? Today, if you're watching Netflix, I was just watching Narcos Mexico 2, and they're on the bridge and he's about to shoot Lupita and my stream died, right? And I'm going, dang it, I'm gonna miss it, right? I'm still cable mind thinking. But what happened? It got restored immediately. Not only did it get restored pretty quickly, they probably found another node from which they could deliver it to me. The stream got rewound 5 seconds. So I did not miss the experience of him shooting her and seeing the blood splatter all over the back. Have you seen Narcos? If you can't handle that, don't. See, I'm saying this after you've all eaten, right? I didn't say it beforehand. That's the result of true chaos engineering, getting that resilience and reliability into your system and its ability to recover quickly. The thinking is very simple, that we live in a chaotic world where services are going to die all the time because they run exclusively on a cloud and they use third-party services and they're highly, highly distributed. That's the thinking behind it. And today this has been commercialized. There's a company called Gremlin which took all these tools and has developed them a commercial variants of it, like it always happens in this open source world. And in fact, some of them were here yesterday. The thinking behind is you want to develop systems that are anti-fragile. The term anti-fragile came from Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He wrote a book called The Black Swan, not the one about the ballet dancers. This is about the stock market crash, the Black Swan events. And then he wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. I guess he figured people were asking enough questions, so let me make another million. And the idea of anti-fragile is that there are 3 kinds of systems in this world. There are robust systems. So if I drop this remote, forgot what it's called, it's robust. It's not going to break likely. If I drop my iPhone, $600 phone is the fragilest, most fragile piece of electronics ever made. It's going to break if I don't have it in a case. And the third kind of systems are which, when they interact with chaos, they actually become stronger. Most biological systems are like that. If a bone breaks, when it heals, at that spot, the bone is stronger. If you start doing deadlifts, which Exhibit A, I should do, the bones increase their calcium density automatically because when faced with stress, the human body is anti-fragile. It starts getting stronger. Anti-fragile systems are the same way, and they need to thrive in chaos. And I don't need to show you slides like this. We are all InfoSec professionals. This was the Sophos study last year, where they put up honeypots, unprotected virtual machines in the cloud all over the world, and wanted to see how quickly do they get hacked. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, it got hacked in 52 seconds. For whatever reason, in Ireland, it took 1 hour, 45 minutes. Wi-Fi is slow in the pubs, I guess. I don't know. But you see the point, right? No matter where you put, there is people hacking. I remember when we were rolling out the container service at IBM, this was during the peak of the Bitcoin price when it was surging. Every time we would deploy a new cluster, somebody would install a crypto miner on it. I'm like, come on, man. We had to write bots which would go and kill Bitcoin miners. In this chaotic world, one needs security chaos engineering. That is, chaos engineering methodologies which are geared towards detecting, identifying, and remediating failures due to security and security incidents all the time. Essentially, democratizing security early, but creating systems which can find the incidents as soon as they happen. More importantly, create examples of those incidents for developers so that they build systems which are ready for those hacking events and those breaches and those attempts to find vulnerabilities to happen, because those vulnerabilities, if they are there in the code, will be exploited. There are 6 aspects of it, right? And most of if you're looking for automation, guidance on automation, like we discussed earlier on, right? This is essentially what we are talking about, right? End-to-end continuous instrumentation, the ability to have observability into security vulnerabilities and which ones of them are attempts being made on to exploit. Continuous readiness assessment, just that's like a fire drill. That's like, poking a hole in your tire and trying to fix it in the dark while your kids are throwing cold water on you. Continuous security gap analysis, looking for new security gaps as they appear, as your code changes and evolves, because that's what it's going to do in an agile DevOps world. It's going to change over time, continuously creating new security gaps in whatever it is you are delivering. And of course, automation on every aspect of security, so that the vulnerabilities and security incidents are identified, detected, and remediated automatically. And we've spoken about this earlier several times, whereas focus on vulnerability and failure identification earlier in the life cycle, right at the developer level, right when the developer writes code, right when the developer builds their code or builds a Docker image out of it. And of course, continuous improvement of operational readiness, right? How can you improve that mean time to recovery next time from whatever you're able to achieve it this time? And do that in a secure, controlled manner by having those vulnerability drills, by doing chaos engineering-like approaches in order to address them continuously.
Elsa, you're all over the place.
How am I supposed to do anything when she's over here just doing her own thing?
Okay, well, maybe if Dan played more than just one string, we'd all be more on the same page.
Are you out of your mind? Okay, I do the E string. That's my job.
Isn't there an easier way to do this?
I
there
wish.
has to be.
I literally just suggested
Right?
something. Nobody ever listens to me, though, so...
Ridiculous every time.
When your team's not on the same page, things can get weird, fast. Don't make your DevOps team live like this.
El tutto tu tempo es finito, Dan!
See? It's like we're not speaking the same language. I'm out.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, making sure your teams are all on the same page.
Do you know how to play the E string?
I can learn.
Well, it's certainly been an action-packed, jam-packed Friday show here at TechStrong TV. I'm glad to say we finished the week strong, TechStrong. So I'm not going to, hopefully we'll see you all here on Monday, ready to watch and grab some great news, as well as, keep you busy while you're working. We hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy some sunshine, some fresh air. Stay well, stay healthy, stay strong, stay TechStrong. Have a great weekend, everyone.